Okay, so as for our next plenary session, Rethinking Team Management for Post-Pandemic Success. So in these difficult times, the pandemic has tested leaders, especially in leading their workplace, both on-site while practicing measures and remotely. So as the crisis goes on, leaders have spent measures and remotely much for their first phase ensuring health and safety, but now it is their role to address their team need in maintaining authentic connections and achieving growth altogether. Okay. Now, following the next speaker for the morning session, Mr. Boris Joaquin will talk about rethinking team management for post-pandemic success. So, so to introduce our next speaker, Boris was involved in various industries, both local and international, for more than 2 decades, and has served organizations in the Philippines, Asia, and Middle East. He has been contributing writer, columnist, and anchor on leading media agencies, including Philippine Daily Inquirer, Philippine Star, Inquirer Libre, Rappler.com, WorkWiseAsia.com, and of course, he's also the current editor-in-chief of the PMAPS People Manager magazine. So Boris also authored two well-received books, Practical Wisdom to Be Happy at Work and Project Purpose, Find Your Why to Find Your Way. So to get some of his insights into the topic, let's call on Mr. Boris Joaquin. Good morning to you, Boris, and thank you for gracing this event.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a delight to actually be part of this huge HR assembly. Thank you for having me, Chester.
Yeah, feeling is mutual. Hey, you may now share your screen.
All right. Okay. Hey, I'm not sharing any screen, Chester, so let me just take over. Again, good morning to everyone. Again, it's and I hope you're not moving towards your lunchtime now. I'm the last speaker for the morning, and typically it's always a challenge to do that. But nonetheless, I will promise to make it your while. This is an amazing gathering. The title is To Humanize, and I actually would like to greet some of my favorite humans in this community, especially the CPHR Batch 11. They call themselves the Orange Batch. And I know Janice Brinas, Grits Dalai, and of course our batch president, my batch president talaga. Si Jean Ilagan is also watching right now. So thank you guys for supporting this event and for tuning into my portion. I don't know if we are the first batch to do it virtually, right? I probably not, but it was a time that we were in the pandemic, we were in the lockdown, and I think the batch has grown closer together. The topic that was assigned to me is about team management, and I think it's very timely to discuss that right now, especially with all the disruptions that are going on, that are affecting work and how we do the future of work. And there's also a good opportunity to create value from all these challenges. I believe organizations should take the broader perspective and be more proactive in dealing with the disruptions and the current changes, whether it be technological, structural, and more particularly behavioral. Any organization has an unprecedented window or opportunity to shape and ultimately redefine how things should be done. Last year, the team was recalibrating, recovering, bouncing back, being able to pivot. And now I think the team moving forward is recovering, remodeling, and retooling, rethinking the situations that we have right now. And in my particular talk this morning, I would like to emphasize on three dimensions that is intrinsically interconnected in any organization. And this would be the work. This is the result that we're trying to achieve, our productivity, our performance. This is the what. And then the worker, that's us, the workforce, the who, and the workplace, the where. I decided to divide my outline on those three dimensions because it affects the way we manage our team, the way we lead our organization and our people. So let me begin with the first one, work. What will it look like now after all of these things? Well, to be honest with you, I think all these disruptions, all this digital transformation, automation, robotics, AI, all these changes has always been knocking on our door, di ba? Na-amplify lang siya. It was just hastened, it was speeded by the pandemic. Na hadali tayo to embrace these changes. But even before the pandemic, I've been doing virtual meetings and virtual workshops and even attending virtual conferences, especially if I have a global community, like if I'm doing it for investors and people or do corporate education. We've been doing it for quite some time with our coaching, doing it via Skype. So it's always been there, but now it's being cemented, and a lot of people have seen the efficiency and effectivity of technology and the new platforms that we have. But we definitely have new rules and new ways of doing things. So instead of looking at the technology, I would rather focus on the behavioral side of it. Because whether we admit it or not, I mean, it's just a reality that we have to accept. I know we're all HR practitioners here, and we're looking at people management, organizational development. But at the end of the day, we are running a business. It's a business-driven organization that we serve. And in a business-driven organization, the customer is always the king, right? The customer is the king. And when it comes to new rules and new ways of doing things, we have to check with our customers what's happening with them. And one of the things that I've always taught in the marketplace is customer centricity. I don't know if you're familiar with the hierarchy of effects. It models and maps out the different levels of customer relationship that your customer have with your product or your services. Feeling ko nagbago na yun talaga. I mean, it's quite obvious naman, guys. Like, that I feel like not many people are into using Gcash. And I remember how Globe would really push it so that a lot of people would use it as an alternative or even as the way to transact and buy things. But now everybody's using Gcash because of what happened. I mean, I'm giving money to my wife and my daughters through Gcash. I get paid through Gcash. Typically, I don't. Normally, it's through bank transfers and all that. Delivery systems. I mean, it's booming right now. And people who understand their customers are the ones who pivoted well also last year and moving on towards this year. So the customer mindset and behaviors have changed. Therefore, it is affecting the way we do things with our work. And we need to consider that. And so how do we respond to this? So the first thing that we need to understand is we need to be agile. Agility has always been a topic that we discuss even before the pandemic. And there are many definitions of agility, but the way I define agility, it's really the overlap between your performance arena and your learning arena, or what I would always tell my clients as you're leading and learning. It has to overlap there. So we need, as we lead our clients, we lead our customers, we lead our team members. We also need to constantly learn. And for some people, because we want to be agile and we want to adapt to the things that are happening right now, we tend to lead more and we go lang nang go. And the problem with that is that we're not really learning and innovating, and we're not entertaining new ideas. And that's why we need to learn. And when people dwell into the learning sphere naman too much, it's the paralysis of the analysis. So agility is really the overlap between the two. So we need to lead, and at the same time, we need to learn. And how do we do that? When we are leading our team, when we push them to perform and to become more productive, we need to pause and step back a bit and try to evaluate how things are done, like common practices that we can still carry forward in the new or the next normal. We can carry forward the toolbox meetings that we normally have at discussing what works and what doesn't work, because it's really important to maintain that balance so that we can be agile in whatever we're doing, and our team can be on top of its game, no matter what that may be. And having said that, I think some of the essential tips that I could really give you guys are the following. Number one is we need to be creative, we need to be innovative, and we need to be resourceful. Those are essentially and fundamentally important. Being resourceful. A lot of us are complaining about we don't have the tools of the trade, we're not ready, but maybe we're just not being resourceful when it comes to accessing the things that are available to us. maybe we need to be more creative and innovative in the way that things are made available to us, because and the way we connect with our people, we need to be highly creative in that. We complain that we are disconnected. It doesn't necessarily so. Even if we don't see people in person, we can still maintain social connectivity or connectedness by being creative and innovative about that. Now, the other thing that I'd like to bring out in this particular, in the first part, which is the redefined way of doing work, is we really need to put our customers first. And when I say put your customer first, and when I say customers, I don't just mean your external customers. I also meant your internal stakeholders altogether. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we need to hear from them. We need to listen to what they're saying. We need to extend empathy. And one thing that I've learned, being an investors in people specialist or practitioner, in order to fostering continuous improvement, we need to welcome and embrace feedback. We need to have a strong feedback loop, whether it's your external customers in sales or marketing, your internal customers in HR. We need to be able to facilitate this, because feedback, sabi nga ni Ken Blanchard, is the breakfast of champions. But a lot of us are afraid of feedback, even before the pandemic, especially during the pandemic. Parang we don't want discouraging or discouraging complaints to actually put us down. But actually, we need this. And to add to my advice on having a strong feedback loop, we need to respond to customer complaints. I know automation is probably one way to respond to the new way of doing work, to find solution to every problem, but do not over automate. I think we need to always humanize the way we talk to our customers, whether external or internal. And of course, the idea behind the feedback loop and responding to customer complaints is find the complaints before they find you, or better yet, be the first to start the complaint conversation. Because we shouldn't be allergic to feedback. And the same is true when it comes to managing our team. When it comes to team management, when you rethink your processes and the way you connect and communicate with them, we need to include the feedback loop all the time. Parang in every meeting, make sure that they give you feedback, whether that went well or didn't go well. After every project, make sure that you evaluate, you have this post-mortem, or just on a regular basis. We need to cultivate a feedback-giving culture within our team, and better within our organization, because it helps us improve the things that we're doing at present, and it helps us look at things from a different perspective, because we may have a blind side on the way we look at things, and other people can actually give us a different perspective. Again, it's all about having a broader perspective and having the right and being proactive when it comes to those perspectives. And on the second part, I like to talk about the workplace. Now, when it comes to the workplace, I think we're seeing a shift. If I'm going to show you parang a chart, a line graph about it, it's probably moving from a co-located situation, di ba? When we're all going to an office, it's co-located. We're all in the same venue, and it's moving towards distributed or remote working, and we're seeing that right now. Actually, I think one of the advantages of the pandemic pushing the marketplace or the workplaces to have more remote or distributed locations for people to work is the discovery that's actually efficient and most likely effective in delivering productivity and performance. And the good thing there is this: you could be more efficient, but you have actually less control. You could have increased productivity, but you have reduced connection. So how do we respond to this in the new rules and leading and engaging our teams? I like to start with the basic. And, some people say, common naman yan. It's very elementary, Boris. But sometimes the most common things, hindi common sa lahat ng tao. And we just need to be reminded by that. And some of the classic EQ advice or EQ strategies that we could implement when it comes to managing our team is still timeless and applicable even to this moment. Like, to begin with, we need to be patient. And that's a critical attitude to have. How many of you are parang madali kayong mairita when a website is not working, or when you are connecting or interacting via chat or via email, and the person on the other side misunderstood you? How many of you get annoyed easily when things are brought into a situation that you were not expecting it? It's not within your expectation. You were disappointed by the other person's way of handling things and the way it was delivered to you. So we just need to be patient and be kind, responding more than reacting. And I know that I love the title of this summit. It says humanize. And then that's a very critical thing to say during this time of digitalization and automation, because we need to bring the humanity in everything that we're doing. To begin with, I always say this to my coachees when I'm coaching them. Our brains are created with a prefrontal cortex, this one. So if you can hold your forehead with me, that's your prefrontal cortex. That's where your strategic thinking comes in, your creativity, innovation, your cerebral tendency to select what's good and what's bad. So it's actually what causes you to hold on to your options and choices and make the right one. And then we have our amygdala. So dito yan sa likod. Sure. And that's your emotional center. That's where you're passionate. That's where you're enthusiastic, and that's where your emotion comes out from. And what the similarity that we have in the animal kingdom among the other animals is the fact that we have this emotional center, the amygdala. Sabi nga nila, di ba, when you fall in love, it's not really the organ here, but it's your hypothalamus. And your hypothalamus is actually the one that allows you to be emotional towards someone. So sometimes I would joke with my wife and I would tell her, I love you with all my hypothalamus and not with my heart. And in the same manner, we need to make sure that we don't use too much of our emotional center when we're dealing with logical stuff like decision making, critical thinking. I think God is very wise to actually create the human brain na nandito yung prefrontal cortex. So if there's a problem, if there's an issue, we can choose to respond rather than react. Di ba? Kapag may aso ka, pag kinanti mo yung aso ng konti, the dog will bark at you. Or if you continue doing it, if you annoy the dog further, it will not only bark at you, it will bite you. And somehow, minsan ganun din tayo when we are angered or triggered by something, we bark at the person or at the situation. And worse, sometimes we bite, we backbite, or we somehow take our form of revenge to another person. And we need to take control of that, especially in this virtual setting that we have right now. And I normally tell my team and some of my clients, in managing your team, we need to exercise so much patience and understanding. And let me give you this framework that I normally give them. And it's an acrostic. It's called PUR or PUR. And it stands for pause, understand, respond. And I think that's a lifesaver for me every time I deal with situations and people and problems. I remind myself I need to pause because I need to look at the root cause of whatever is happening. I need to find out the real score, because sometimes what's being presented to you on the surface, it's not the real score. So if you remember your 5 whys approach, diba, just ask why nang why hanggang umaray. And the pain point there is obviously the real score, or the root cause of whatever problem or situation you may have yourself into. And once you understand it, you can choose now what kind of response you will give to the person, to their situation. And because our workplace now is distributed and we get to engage people in different modes, we need to remember this essential human dynamics, or this emotional quotient principle, because we have to connect in multiple ways with our people, with our teams, to compensate with the lack of in-person connection, because the water cooler effect is not there anymore, because we don't get to have our team building the way we normally have it. So we need to find ways to connect with people. And when we do that, whether through Viber, Telegram, or WhatsApp, or we do it through Zoom or StreamYard or what have you, we need to exercise those key attributes that I mentioned a while ago. We need to pause, understand, and respond. We need to be patient and be kind, because we're trying to nurture that relationship, which I will concretize later when I near the end of my talk. And this requires so much endurance. And when I talk about endurance, it's not just physical endurance. Alam ko lahat tayo na nagkakaroon na tayo ng virtual fatigue, or some are saying Zoom fatigue kasi you're always using it. I'm always using it every day. Sometimes I don't want to use it anymore when I'm meeting with my Bible study groups or my friends, because it reminds me of work. But it's more than physical endurance. I think we need to have emotional endurance, because we need to be patient. We need to be kind. We need to be considerate. We need to extend empathy towards other people. We need to respond and not react. And therefore, our emotions need to endure some annoyances that may come our way every day, every single day. We need to recalibrate the way we take things with our prefrontal cortex and lessen the emotional reaction that we may have simply because we feel like reacting. The crisis exposed our emotional tendencies to react in various situations. And you probably saw yourself in your worst situation, especially in the most recent times. But we have the capacity to choose how to respond to people. So whenever you're tempted to do that, just remind yourself, tao ako, hindi ako aso. And I will choose to respond to this situation. But first, I probably need to pause and understand on what's happening right now. And third and lastly, let's talk about the workers or the workforce. And if the workplace is diversifying or it's actually moving and changing, ganun din po yung workforce. We have to rethink our talent model, so to speak. And if I'm going to put it in a spectrum again, the traditional model that we have right now is everybody's employed, right? We hire people and we keep them and we make them part of the community. But now I think we're moving towards more contractual and skills-specific talents. And I think, and we're not losing them in the full-time workers. So I think it's going to be a blended combination of that. So we'll have skilled people being consultants, contracted for their skills and talents to do specific things. Like myself, I'm a freelancer. I'm normally a consultant for some of my clients for various organizations, doing coaching or doing leadership and development or learning and development curriculum for them. So that's typically my specialization, and that's normally what I would do for other people. And we'll have more people who specializing on certain things, and they'll be hired for it. So the issue now, not really the problem, your situation now is that you'll have more diversity. And the beautiful thing about diversity is you have more people, you have more contributions in terms of ideas, but the more diverse your community or organization is, the more you would differ on values. And I think despite the open talent continuum from traditional employed to open contract-based people or freelancer, we need to respond to that by fostering a strong sense of belongingness. Yeah, you heard me right, a strong sense of belongingness. Because at the end of the day, you want to have shared vision and values with people, whether they are full-time or not. You want them to be on board and on the same page with you. So we need to foster and create a strong sense of community. One of the things that we teach organizations in order to be high performing is to build from their people their strong sense of commitment and competence. And from an organizational perspective, we need to have a strong sense of mission and a strong sense of belongingness or membership, missions and membership. Because when you have both of that, productivity will increase, your competence will increase, and your commitment will also increase. So you need to have a strong sense of community, so to speak. And having a strong sense of community means that you need to be more intentional in building the heart in the group, more than just the skills that are happening, that's already there. We need to probably more emphasize this. And a lot of you would probably be saying, but that's difficult, Boris, because right now we have a blended way of doing things. And that's where the challenge is really. How do we put more heart in what we're doing even though we're doing it virtually, even though we're doing it remotely. And that's where being creative and innovative comes in. That's where being resourceful comes in. Now, during the pandemic, a lot of people complained that it hindered or affected their productivity and performance because for the lack of connectivity or connectedness with their teammates. Now, I did observe, however, that people who thrived, the teams and organizations that thrived despite the pandemic, are the teams that are the team leaders that are already invested with their team members. Kumbaga, meron na silang connection. They already have this trust with one another. They already have this bond with one another. The relationship is already there. Therefore, it's easier for them to pivot, even if they haven't seen each other for a year and a half, just like myself. I haven't seen my team for a year and a half, and I think we're doing pretty well despite the impact that it had in the learning industry. I think my company is doing fairly well, and I haven't really seen my teammates in person. But because there's a stake there already, there's an investment of the heart, there's a connection. We are able to continue the journey despite not being able to see one another. But of course, the challenge here is some of you may say, what if the situation is we haven't really invested? And that's where you need to be creative and innovative in doing that. How do you look at platforms? I said a while ago, I get Zoom fatigue. And whenever my friends would ask me to go on Zoom for fellowship, I kind of despise it because it's already worked for me and I don't want to go to the platform again. We have a tendency to associate positive and negative things to certain elements or aspect of our lives. So if let's say the chat group is something that's negative for me because somebody embarrassed me in front of within the group, in the chat group, I would probably associate Viber with that negativity, and I probably wouldn't choose to use it if, let's say, I want to talk to somebody. Or if I'm talking to my wife in Messenger and there's a lot of positivity there, or kung may nililigawan ka through Messenger, so and then you love using Messenger because you're positive about that messaging app, then most likely you would like to use it and you would like to associate it with loved ones and friends. So may association tayo. So if you're connecting with your with your teammates on a particular platform, you may want to redesign how they look at that platform. If it's all work, then that's how they see it. But you may want to parang jazz it up a bit. Make sure that you can do other fun things using those platforms. And you probably read this advice several times already from other people. But the point is, we need to humanize the way we connect with our people despite being virtual. And if there's one thing that I've learned with other apps, like I recently had a partnership with Kumu, is that this particular app has grown overnight because people would like to have a strong sense of community. And whether it's entertainment and they're gamifying it and they're adding gimmicks and all that, regardless, it's actually helping build and foster a strong sense of community among the Filipino people here and abroad. And we want to have that strong sense of community. And your employees, your teammates, whether full-time or contractual, would like to see that from you, would like to see you build more heart, foster more connection, foster more conversations, more than coaching and mentoring, conversations, normal, typical human conversations, whether on virtual or in person. I mean, who knows? I mean, I just got my second shot of vaccine the other day. I mean, maybe it would be a blended normal for us. We still have the virtual platforms, but once the in-person, well, once you can actually meet people, you have to make sure that you meet with people that you haven't fully invested in, and you want to cultivate that trust altogether. Now, I want to end with that note. I want to end with that word community, because at the end of the day, it's very important that we look at the 90-10 rule. What's the 90-10 rule? Well, we've been saying that in a lot of our leadership and sales workshops to our clients. The 90-10 rule is essentially 90% relational, 10% technological or techniques or platforms. a lot of people were perplexed last year. Kasi sabi nila, grabe, hindi kami ready. We're not automated. We don't have the we don't have the systems. We do not know how to pivot, and they all worry how they're going to do that. Or something as basic as we do not know how to go virtual. Hindi namin alam yung mga ibang messaging apps and all that. But I keep reassuring them and encouraging them. It's 90-10. It's 90% relational, 10% technological. Regardless of the digital disruptions and the changes, well, you can all learn that. It's good to understand what are the new platforms and the new systems that you can use, CRM, feedback mechanisms, and all that. But at the end of the day, if you have built good relationships with your teammates, with your customers, with your stakeholders, then you got yourself solid. Kumbaga, mas madali na to continue fostering continuing the thing that you're doing right now, whether in productivity or in driving performance. And it's going to actually bring you to the other side, from point A to point B. It's the one that allowed many businesses not just survive but thrive last year. The amount of relationship that you have. And the amount of relationship that you have will eventually cement the trust that you have with one another. And that is one of the things that I would like to give you, team leaders and anybody who's leading a team right now. It's the fundamental foundation of any team and any organization. There has to be trust. Because if there's trust, regardless of the conflict that you would have, may tiwala kayo sa isa't isa, di ba? And even with your customers, regardless of the complaints, if you have trust with one another, they will still remain as your customer. And trust is the one that bridges. Trust is the one that bridges expectations to experience. So when it comes to customers, that will tide you through. And several intelligent business owners know that the higher the trust, the higher the returns. And for us team leaders, and if you're managing a team, always remember this. Trust is the glue that binds the team together. And if that's existing and you have invested in your people, di ba trust parang sa banko, trust fund, you have to make deposits. Dr. George Harley said every person has an emotional bank account that if we make deposits in them, we are investing in their trust fund. And when you make deposits, it's easier to make withdrawals. The problem with a lot of leaders after 2020 or during 2020 and moving forward, there's nothing in the trust fund. There's nothing deposited there. So when they're trying to withdraw, when they're trying to communicate and connect and trying to draw out the results from their people, there's nothing to draw out. It's very dry. It's empty. So we need to make deposits so that we can make withdrawals eventually. And that's how it works, with or without the pandemic. May pandemya man or wala, digitalization man o wala, it's still applicable to this point. And I think we have to strengthen it even more, especially during these times, especially after the pandemic. When things go back, not really go back to normal, when things proceed to the next normal, and a lot of these things are blended with our work, in our workplace, and with our workers, we need to exercise some of these classic principles all the more. Feedback, emotional quotient, listening to your people, generating trust, building trust. Because you know what they say, during a crisis, we are truly tested. And the bad companies are destroyed by a crisis. Good companies may survive the crisis, but great companies or great teams are defined by this crisis. And it all depends on you, on how you would exercise all of this, particularly with your team. So with that, I would like to wish you all the best, and may God continue to bless the works of your hand and the efforts of your team. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you very much for that. No, we have actually plenty of food for thought. So again, do not over automate. Don't be allergic to feedback, and of course, also cultivate feedback culture. And syempre, yung ating talagang naiwan na ano no, na keyword no, yung PER or pause, understand, and respect. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. So habang wala pa tayong questions and entertain, I guess meron tayong parang ano dito pertinent question here since we're managing also both in-office uh, employees and remotely. So now the question is, how do we recreate the chemistry between in-office and remote employees? Kasi we still have in-office employees at the same time
Yeah.
remote employees.
Well, that's a very good question. Well, to begin with, let me say that I don't think nothing will compare to in-person interaction. I think that's a given. Medyo ano yun, we know that because we will miss out on a lot of things like body language and just looking at the person in the eye. Like right now, I'm looking at the webcam. I'm not really looking at you in the eye. So medyo ano, di ba? It's really different. So what we can actually do is really try to compensate for the lack of. I think that's what I'm saying. I don't think we can ever duplicate it. So bawi, kumbaga sa Tagalog, babawi tayo. So for example, don't limit yourself to one platform. If you're using, let's say, MS Teams in connecting with your teams, don't just limit it there. Maybe create a Viber group or a WhatsApp group and have a different purpose for that altogether. Because nawala yung water cooler experience, diba? Yung hallway experiences na typically we encounter people outside of their cubicles or outside of their conference rooms. So let's try to compensate for the lack of. But it's not equivalent. So it doesn't really replace it. So using the chat group would probably be a good thing to do, just for short chats. Use another platform to watch a movie together. Kung gusto niyo yun, maybe your team likes a particular TV series. Like I remember yung team ko before the pandemic, we used to watch Umbrella Academy. Nanonood kami. They go to my house and they watch Umbrella Academy, and we can't do that now, obviously. Pero we can still watch a movie. So we can still do that virtually via Zoom or I don't know, maybe other platforms. But the thing is, we need to come up with creative and innovative ways to do it. And I find some of my clients and other team leaders, ang galing nila sa ganon. Engagement tools, pag-games, and pero syempre, you don't have to be, kung hindi ka magaling magpag-games, parang wag mo ipilit kasi it might look trite. So the other tip is conversations. So when you have conversations sa chat, sometimes kasi sa chat kasi 'di ba or sa email, ano ka lang one-liner or one paragraph, it's direction and then answer. Parang gusto mo direction and obedience, ganun dapat eh. Pero why not ask questions and not just questions related to work, explorative questions, reflective questions, and make people think. Sometimes I feel I'm engaged and I feel that the person cares for me if the chat has meaningful questions for me. And then of course we cannot remove naman the importance of really calling somebody. I mean, picking up your phone and talking to that somebody. Kumusta ka na, Jester? Ano nangyari sa buhay mo? So conversations, basic conversations could probably spell the difference in building that connectedness with your people and fostering, investing, and creating that trust system that you may need with one another.
Right? That's actually a very good answer. No? So again, so that we will be able to leave employees left behind. No? So it's our goal to ensure that we create an authentic relationship both for in office and remotely. So again, thank you very much, Mr. Boris Joaquin, for this wonderful session. So ito yung aming challenge sa mga viewers, no? Do something extraordinary. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Bye.